Okay, so we just focused on what's happening on the server side. What's happening on the server is there is a servlet object that has methods that are invoked when HTTP requests come in. They're called doGet, doPost, and they are given objects that represent the HTTP request and then the response that's sent back to the client. Now we're going to talk about the command line client. So the web browser is the web browser, and so it has that index.html that uses simple HTML forms to do the get and the post. But for your assignment, and what I can test easily, is your command line tool. And so now the command line tool is uses Java code to form HTTP requests and handle the HTTP response. So now let's take a look. Let's open up your open up things we got here. We also actually I didn't really walk through this. We've got the servlet code here, and somebody asked, "Oh, wait a second. I'm going to need to put my appointment book and my appointment classes someplace." You'll just copy them right in here. You could make a actually no, you couldn't. Just copy them all in here so you can submit all of your code in one fell swoop. So everything, you've got the source main Java directory here, which is the Maven standard, just like you do in your projects 1, 2, and 3.
Copy the appointment book.
All your projects in Pretty Printer and like whatever you need, to, just copy it in there. So anything from project 3, just copy it into the same directory. You can copy your unit tests and integration tests over, I suppose, if you want.
Should the appointment book REST client Java file be opening with errors?
No.
It's not able to resolve the get method in response equals get map.
Oh, and that's interesting because that's the thing that we thought everybody fixed by blowing away their Maven repository, and you blew away your Maven repository.
Yeah, the Maven thing builds. They passed the build.
I wonder why it's not finding it then.
Still can't find it.
That's weird. Click on get and see
I can go to it.
where it
It's there.
And does it have the signature you'd expect? Does it take a map, or does it take?
Yeah, it takes this URL string, map string
Huh.
parameters in HTTP request helper.class.
Yeah.
And it returns an HTTP request helper.response.
Yep, that's what should be expected.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Now it's fine. Okay, so I figured it out.
I guess
Just kind of slap. You went all Fonzie on it and just like, yeah, the jukebox or everything. Okay. By the way, there's always one reference to Happy Days, so you just got it. Go back and watch the old videos or something. Anyway. Okay. I haven't made the Felicity joke yet, so there's always a joke about Felicity. Yeah, Felicity, right? Yeah, right. Right on. Okay. So, okay. Oops, that's not the class that I want. I want Project 4. So, the Project 4, let's take a look at what Project 4 is all about. So Project 4, if you run with no arguments, it prints out usage. Okay, so there's 4 parameters, 4 command line arguments, the host, the port, the word, and the definition. And then depending on whether or not word and definition are provided, it does different things. Okay, so let's look at how that's implemented. Okay, so there's command line parsing. You all know how to do that. It'll throw errors if stuff is missing. It gets the port. This is the interesting thing. So what the command line tool does is it leverages a class called Appointment Book REST Client to do all the heavy lifting. So what Appointment Book REST Client does is it provides an abstraction over calling all of the REST APIs. And this is an important thing to do in your code, right? You want to, just the same way that, well, actually, I guess we don't have a good example of that. Well, I guess like the text dumper is an abstraction, right? It has one method, hey, go off and dump it, and then what it provides is all the logic, is all the know-how to take that appointment book and turn it into a text file. Well, the same way here, I've provided you with a class called Appointment Book REST Client, which takes care of all of the heavy lifting of calling the of doing a poster get to the URL and then handling the response. So let's actually okay. So let's debug this also. So let's go through the debugger routine again, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through both the client and the server. So I want to create another configuration. This is going to be another remote, because now I'm going to be debugging the command line tool. In addition to that, I'll need to run on a different port. That'll be port 5006. It's going to be localhost 5006. Here I want to say suspend yes. Can I change that? Oh wait. Attach remote listen to. Nope. Attach to remote VM. Well, I used to be able to configure all of that. I guess I can't anymore. That's cool. Now, when I launch my JVM, I want to put it. So I'm not running Maven. I'm just running it straight up. So I put it the -agent-lib on the command line. I want to say suspend yes. What this will do is that when it starts the program, it'll wait for the debugger to attach before executing. Because otherwise, the main program would just go off and do its thing, and I wouldn't have a chance to attach with the debugger and set a breakpoint. So I'll just run this as is with no command line arguments. It's listening for someone to talk to it on port 5006. I'm going to set a breakpoint. I'll set it here at the beginning of my method. So this is in project 4. Now I'm going to attach the debugger here. Attach the debugger. The debugger attached to the process and hit the breakpoint. Sorry, here I am iterating over the arguments. Arguments is a string of size 0. It's empty. I will then step over all of that. Host name is null because because the loop didn't hit it, and so not surprisingly, then it goes to the usage method. It prints out a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to
set your breakpoint
at the beginning of the for loop. Yep, and nothing was executed. I'm stuck in this method. I want to get out of this method, so I will say step out. And now, oops, did it? Oh, maybe it finished. Did it finish? Oh, it did. Okay, and now it printed all that stuff. That's not what I expected to do, but okay. Well, that's not very interesting. Sorry, I don't remember what I've had in there. I have Mia name. That's not right. I had other stuff in there. Fa, I think was the last one. That I did. So now if I run it with fa, oh, actually, sorry, I need the host.
Does it need to be running for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, otherwise I'll get an error saying I can't connect to the web server, which is not a bad thing, which is what it's supposed to do. So now if I run it with, again, I'm running it in debug mode with the local host, with the host and the port and the word. Attach again with the debugger. Okay, there are 3 command line arguments, localhost, 8080, and fa. So now if I just step through all this, it'll assign host name, port string, and the word. It's done iterating over things. It's got a host name. It's got a port. The port is a valid integer, so now the int port is 8080, which is the parsing of the string 8080. It goes and creates one of these appointment book REST client objects. Now it's got this client object. The word is not null. And so, let's see here. Definition is null, though.
It was dough, right? Not fa. Was it dough?
I think I got you fine. Well, we'll see. Okay. So now it's going to call this client.getDefinition of word. It's going to call this getDefinition method on the client and give it the word. So it called that. What that did was that it made the HTTP request of the server, and now the debugger hits a breakpoint on the server. I'm debugging two processes, all in the same IntelliJ, all in the same code base. This is where it gets complicated and fun and interesting. So now the debugger hits the breakpoint in the doGet method, which again is running in the web container. Right? Let's go back to the picture that we had here. We've got two processes. The debugger is attached to the client machine, the web browser, in this case the command line, on the left, and another debugger session is talking to the server on the right. Okay, so now here I am in the server-side code. I'm debugging this. The word that I'm asking for is fa. Again, this was passed. This is what we put on the command line. The appointment book client get definition method went and crafted the URL. We'll look at all that code in a little bit, and made the request to the server. Now we're hitting it on the server, and we will look up the definition of fa. And now we're done here. We'll continue on here. We'll go back to 5006. We're now here, so this is interesting. Is this really where we're executing line 81? And so now we can see that, oh wait, nothing, what's going on here? Interesting. So now where are we at? Oh, here we go, message. And so what happened here, we were right here. That is not correct. We were on this line right here, then we were down here. What was returned in message is the string fa a long, long way to run, and we print that to system.out, and we exit. And sure enough, the command line printed fa a long, long way to run. So what the command line does is it uses this appointment book REST client to go and make the calls. Let's debug it again, and now let's dive into the appointment book REST client to figure out what it's doing. So once more with feeling, let's see here. We'll just let's just do the same. No, let's print them all. Okay, we'll parse the command line, and actually that is pretty boring, so I'm going to do another breakpoint right here in the client after we parsed all of that. I'll just continue on. Oh, it hits at the top of every loop? Lame. So I'll just stop parsing the command line. I'll take away the breakpoint. Now it stops down here. Okay, I create this new appointment book REST client. I can use the step into F7 to go into this constructor. It needs to format the URL, so it does that this way by formatting the URL. So the appointment book REST client has a URL string that it uses, and so the URL is HTTP localhost. Actually, I'll just put it right here. You can probably see it a little easier. Localhost 8080/appsbook/appointments, and so this is the URL, the same one that we hit in the browser. Right over here, appointment book/appointments. Okay, so we created this this appointment book REST client with that URL. And now we're going to figure out, based on what the command line arguments were, what do we do with it? So word here is null. So what we're going to do is we're going to call the get all dictionary entries from the client. So I'm going to step into that code. Here we are in the get all dictionary entries method, and it calls this get method. Now, this get method here is, I guess one thing I didn't explain is that the appointment book REST client extends something called HTTP helper, HTTP request helper, which is a class that I wrote for your benefit. So this is one of my classes. It's off in the CS410J web package, and this takes care of all of the code that like crafts the HTTP request and actually opens up the URL, and makes the connection, and reads everything, and does all the encoding. I didn't want you to have to write all of that yourself, and so I did it. Instead, what you need to do is learn how to use this API. I hope it's easy to use. So like the get method, it takes a URL. It takes a URL string and then a map of the parameters. And these are the parameters that you put on the URL like this, like word equals me. Right now, because we're getting all dictionary entries, we're not providing any parameters, so we're just getting an empty map or a map of nothing. So I'll call that, and it returns this response object. Oh, sorry. Here I am now on the server side. And here, when we step through, we're just going to write all the dictionary entries. So I'll continue doing that. Go over to my other debug session. I've got my response object. Now, response object and response is one of my classes that I wrote. And you can see in the response, it's got information such as the HTTP code that was returned. The server returned to 200. The content, this is what was written to the HTTP response. This was written by the server in that print writer. And then, let's see here, returns content lines. I don't remember if that's for testing or what that's for exactly, but it's not being used. Instead, what we do is we call the getContent method on the response. And that's this big old string. The dictionary on the server contains 2 words. Me, a name I call myself, or me, a name, and fa, long a way to run. And so that returns it as a map of strings. And now I've got this map of strings. And so what I do here in my main is I then format them, make them look pretty, and then set as the message. And then I print out the message. Yep, there it is. And then I will exit the VM. And now it's back.
Why would you think that the debugger would not be working for my breakpoints in Project 4, but is working for like the ones in the servlet class?
Did you put the... you can attach the debugger? So you have the -agent lib here on the command line?
Yeah, I'm running it with that each time.
And let's see here, and you have the appointmentbook.jar there. Obviously, it's running.
It runs and it listens for transport DTU socket.
Do you have... Sorry, does it have... Do you have the suspend equals yes?
No.
That would do it. So again, the suspend equals... I know it was very subtle. I went fast. The suspend equals yes tells the JVM, don't start doing anything until the debugger attaches. And so the command line, which here, again, it will hit that breakpoint very quickly because it's like the second line of code that it executes. You're not going to have time to attach that. So instead what you want to do is you want to launch the Java program saying, hey, wait for the debugger to attach and then do your thing.
So then if it doesn't ever get past that point, and it just sits there and listens and the debugger still doesn't fire up.
It just sits there and waits. That's what you're told to do.
Okay.
Right.
Until
the debugger attaches.
okay.
Yeah. Right, and right. So we started out, the first program that we debugged was the servlet. Now, what do you think the first thing that the web container does when it starts up? What do you think it does? All sorts of things, right? It's launching Jetty and it's loading your applications, all sorts of things. You don't want to debug that. That's all internal. What you want to care about is the actual execution of your servlet, and that's why it's okay. That's why you don't need to say suspend equals y on the on Jetty, because it won't execute any of your code until the web browser hits it, until the URL is hit. So the whole idea of the appointment book test servlet is to provide an abstraction over the REST API, and so what it does is, oops, where to go? The REST client. And so it provides methods that do things like return maps of strings. So instead of just a bunch of text, it returns a map of string. And similarly, well, like get definition, it returns, it returns a string. The whole idea here is that we're hiding all the details of calling the REST API so that your main method doesn't need to know all that stuff. Your main method doesn't need to know how to put the URL together, how to set the parameters correctly, all of that kind of stuff. And it can also do things like act more naturally in the case of an error. So if it goes and calls, and if it goes and tries to do something that's wrong, it will, or rather, if it gets, it is a Java API. When something goes wrong with a Java API, you want to throw an exception, right? You don't want to return. Well, you can't return an int because you've got a method like getDefinition that returns a string. So what should you do if like getDefinition fails? What should happen if if you go to look for a word that doesn't exist? Maybe return null, maybe okay, but what if there's an internal server error? Is that also a null? How do you determine whether or not it was, the call wasn't happy because you asked for something bad, as opposed to something bad happening when you went to look it up? The idea here is that you want to provide a fluent Java interface, and part of that fluency is throwing exceptions. So, yeah.
I guess to go back to the question that was asked earlier, at what point would you catch that exception?
In the main.
Okay.
Yep. And that's, so it throws IO exception. And let's see here. If I try to execute this, and let's see here, Fred, I wonder what happens. Let's debug this. So, okay. We got the appointment REST client. We go and we're going to call getDefinition. Here we're going to say do an HTTP GET of this URL, and the parameters we're going to send is a map of the string word to the value word, which is Fred here. We're going to send that in. So let's step over that. Okay, so Fred, the word is Fred. We write the definition. We get the definition. Oh, interesting. Oh, it doesn't give you an error. What will give you an error? Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. This is a servlet, okay. Okay.
So it just like sets an empty definition?
Well, it probably says some message or something. Let's figure it out. What was the response? The response had a 200. Oh, it just writes null. Well, that's unfortunate. Let's fix that. Let's fix that by writing a unit test.
So,
Yes?
is it in the REST client or the servlet that null is getting written?
Well, it gets written. Right now I am, I'm back in the client-side code. The null is written in the servlet, and I want to change that.
Okay.
So let's just keep going here. Sorry, my phone is lighting up. Just make sure it's something important. Oh, gee whiz. Okay. Okay, so yeah, let's run ourselves a unit test. So now, so like right now, so let's just stop all this. I'm going to detach from the debuggers. Well, this is probably all done. There's nothing there. I'm going to detach here.
The do post has a check for definition equivalent.
I do?
Yeah.
Oh, on the post. Sure, but I was doing a get. I was looking it up.
I mean, it just checks for word being.
Yeah, so here, there's no check to see if word's null. So let's do that. But because I'm test-driven and slightly insane, let's see if we can write a test first. So I want to say...
But wouldn't you, if you ran it with Fred, wouldn't have had to do a post first? And shouldn't it
Nope.
have given you an error back?
Because you're just looking it up.
Oh.
It should give you an error back, but it's not, and I want to change that. So looking up unknown word returns 404. Yeah, sorry, not found. Okay, so let's see here. This is add one word. I want to look it up. So, okay, I'm going to have all of this good stuff. And here I'm going to set up my here. So I want my request parameter. When I say, hey, what's the word? The word is going to be a known word. And what I expect is that, let's see here, when I do a get, I want to, I expect that what is written to the status, or what the status is SC not found 404. Yeah.
I'm getting unhandled IO exception.
Yeah, I put it in the throws after the test.
So,
After the declaration throws, I have exception, circle exceptions.
oh, I see. I missed that.
Oh, sorry, the error. Yes, yeah, the error. Yes, so you have to add it to the throws declaration. Yep. Yep. Sorry, I was going fast there. Okay, now when I run this, I expect it to fail. It did. Okay, and now we get to look at like Mockito error messages, which are actually pretty cool. It says arguments are different. I wanted set status of 404 at this line, but instead it was actually invoked with a set status of 200 on this other line. And actually, all of this line information is just super awesome. But anyway, so that's not what I wanted. And actually, I probably also want some sort of error message. I'm not going to do that tonight, though, because let's just do that quickly. So, okay. So now I want to change my do-get. And so I want to say, if word equals null, write definition. So I guess in the write definition method, I want to say, yeah, right here. So I want to say, if definition equals null, oops, then I want a response.setStatus of SC not found. Yep. Otherwise, this. Okay, now when I run my test again, it passed. Yay, because now when there wasn't a definition, it returns SC not found. And so the reason I wanted to do all of this was so that when I got to restart. Now, why do I need to restart Jetty? Yes, you change the server-side code, you got to restart Jetty. Otherwise, it doesn't know to get the new changes. And there might be a way you can run Jetty that's smart enough to do that, but Maven's challenging enough. Now, I'm going to run this again, and let's see here. Yeah, I'm going to attach to the. I'm going to attach to. Actually, this localhost ought to be localhost 5005. And actually, we should probably now let's call it something like Jetty. And so we'll attach to the Jetty. And then we'll run the command line over here with just Fred. And then we'll attach to localhost 5006. Okay, so we'll create the client. The word is not null. This is, we will step into get definition. Okay, now get definition is going to get the URL with word. Okay, now here we are over in get. We're going to write the definition. The definition, oops, where's the debugger? The definition is null, so I'd expect that what is returned is a 404, and it is. Let's continue on. Let's go back to the other debugger. Okay, now it's got the response. So the response, oh shoot, the response code is 200. How'd that happen? Why is the response code 200? Interesting. Okay, so that does not throw the exception. Huh. Why is the response code 200? Oh, maybe, no? I mean, I debugged it.
Did you restart both debuggers?
I did. What happens if I hit it in the browser? I wonder if it's the fact because I write something to the body, does that mess it up?
Since there's a like the word null is there.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the fact that I wrote something to the body. So let's just move all this down here. That'd be super lame if that's the way it worked, but that's the way it works. Okay. Let's just try this. Yeah, compiling sources, and so then it's building the code. Oops, did not start yet. Oh, maybe it's because you got a 404. Yep, okay, so I bet that this is an indication that I got a 404 then. Oh yeah, HTTP error 404. Okay, so that's weird. So I guess then that Jetty, if there is an error, if you write any content to the print writer, it assumes that your status is 200. Huh. Meh. That's unfortunate. Maybe that's part of the servlet spec? I don't know.
So you're saying because it was able to do anything at all?
Because it wrote something to something to the body of the response, it said it must be good. Interesting. Huh. Okay. So now, okay, we'll try it again. We will debug.
Oh, you're saying where it says response.getWriter?
Yeah. So apparently, like what's it called, getWriter.
So like interacting with response at all, almost with like.
It appears to be that way, which is weird, but you're using somebody else's code. Okay, so response 404. Okay, good. So this is what happens when okay. So now I'm here. Okay, sorry. Back up the stack. We are in appointment book REST client. This is the code that abstracts the calls to the REST API. It goes and makes a call to the REST API, gets this response object, and it says, "Hey, listen, unless it's a 200, unless it's a HTTP OK, throw some exception." So I'm going to step into this method here. I'm going to get the response code. It is not the code is 404. I'm going to throw an appointment book REST exception, and what happens? Something that shouldn't happen in your code. It just spills out all over the place. So the idea here is that what I want you to take away from this is it makes it your project 4 code easier to deal with the appointment book REST client because it abstracts all of the dealing with the URL and all of the translation between what the URL needs, which is like encoding of the parameters and creating the post parameters, right, and all that kind of stuff. Because your project 4, it just wants to call some Java APIs, right? It doesn't want to it doesn't want to have to know that underneath the covers is all of this REST stuff. So all of that responsibility, all of the REST responsibility is put into the REST client. But then you have to translate back and forth. So you need to translate the stuff that you put into the request, but then in a response, if the response comes back with an error, the way you should propagate that error is via a Java exception because what your project 4 is expecting is a Java exception. So anyway, that's what that whole thing was about, and I was able to demonstrate that because I changed my servlet to actually return something that wasn't a 200. So, does the client make sense? There are several parts to the client. There's the project 4, which is your command line parsing, and then there's the appointment book client, which is dealing with the REST API. One last thing. So, the REST client is a kind of a complex piece of code, and this is the thing. And so then I ask myself, well, how do I test this? What do I need to test it? I'm like, I could use Mockito, and I'm like, well, this deals with URLs. I don't know how to mock out a URL response. That sounds really, really tough. So you know what? I think I'm going to have to bite the bullet, and actually, if I'm going to run this, I want to run it against the web application. I want to have the REST API out there, and I want to call it REST API, damn it. So, okay, that's a complex test. It's way too complex for a unit test. That's an integration test. So, in order to test the client-side code, I have some integration tests, which means that you have integration tests. I have integration tests that use invoke main, so I can actually test the main method. Yay! But probably the one interesting one is the appointment book REST client. So here is a JUnit test, and actually it's a pretty straightforward JUnit test, except that it has this fixed method order annotation. It's important that because these. Okay, here's what happens. Maven will start up the web application, start up Jetty, and launch the web application in it, and then the test makes calls to it. Now, even though the tests themselves are torn down, the web application is up there. It remains up there and remains running, which means that if your test cases have any side effects, those side effects remain. So it's important then that your test cases are always run in a consistent order. So I've configured my unit test here to always run the methods in ascending order by name, and so that every test method is like test 0, test 1, test 2, and that way I can guarantee that the tests are always run in the same order. Without this annotation up here in the top, the order of the methods is undefined. It might be in alphabetical order, it might not be. This way it's guaranteed to be in alphabetical order.
So you're saying unless you specify tests will just run in random order?
Not random, unspecified. So which means you can't rely on a certain order.
Okay.
So and it has to do with, again, reflection. JUnit is implemented using reflection. One of the things in the reflection API is like, okay, hey object, tell me all of your methods. But the order in which those methods is returned is not defined. So it's up to the JVM. Hey, it could be in alphabetical order. It could be the order in which they're declared. It could be return ints before straight, right? It's just not defined. And so then you can't rely on it. So it might work on one machine, but not work on another machine. So here again, it's not random. It's unspecified. Yeah.
I was running a larger test suite the other day, and I was noticing they were like
Yep.
out of order, and I'm like, wait, they
Yeah.
don't run just top down? Like,
Well,
I didn't realize until
there is no guarantee that the order of your source code is the order in which they will be represented in the VM, right? There's no specification there. So then, using this annotation then will tell the JUnit framework, listen, go, sort them alphabetically and run them in that order. So, what this integration test does is it's run in an environment where the web application is deployed in Jetty and is running. And so then it goes and creates the RESTbook client and it calls methods on it. So here is here's a method that says, okay, I'm going to use the appointment book REST client to get all dictionary entries, and I assume that here at the beginning there are 0 entries because I've removed them all. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's see. Actually, am I running Jetty? I'm running Jetty, and I'm running it on port 8080. So I think if I run this test here, it's going to pass, right? Cool. But if I stop Jetty and I run this test, it's going to fail because I got connection refused, right? So appointment book client goes and does the HTTP GET. It tries to make a connection, and it's like, nope, I ain't here. That ends up getting propagated back by this connect exception here. And actually you can see, it goes to call the delete, et cetera, and ends up getting a connection refused. So you can develop your integration tests while Jetty's running. You can do it right here. So you can run these tests. And again, they sort of need to be run in order. So like, I guess I got rid of test 3. Yes, I don't have a terribly interesting test case that I can make fail. But now, if I go and I run all of them, it runs them all against the Jetty that's running there. As a matter of fact, if I then go and I ping that, okay, good. It's got test word, test definition, which is exactly what my test, where is it? My test put in right here. So again, this is the kind of interesting thing about Jetty. It provides, because the web server is still there, you get persistence of a sort. And so then you got to be careful. It's like, oh, is my Jetty still running in the background? Why am I seeing these behaviors and stuff like that? It's just more complex. But it's also more powerful because you do have this thing that's persistent, that has behavior that can do all of this stuff. So I can write integration tests that require Jetty to be run. And then when I do a Maven verify, what Maven verify does, sorry, I'll use the wrapper, because that's what you'll be using probably. So Maven verify then goes and after it does the compile, after it does the build, runs the unit tests right here. Now it's running the unit tests. Then it'll go off, build a WAR file. That's what it's doing now. Slowly. It's putting the shaded jar, so it's putting this Uber jar together. Now it's starting Jetty right here. Now it's running the integration tests. Oh, something failed. That's super cool. Why did it fail? Test 3, no definitions. Oh, interesting. I wonder if that's actually... Where'd that even come from? And then it ran your... Sorry, let me go back here. It ran... Here's where it's starting up Jetty. It runs the integration test. Something failed. And then it tears it down. Right? Jetty is stopped. And so here again, this is something that Maven gets you. Because we've configured Maven... It does all the work of starting Jetty for you, running your tests, getting all the output of the tests, and then shutting things down. Test 3, no definitions. I bet that needs to be fixed now. Where is test 3, no definitions? Do you see it? What?
Does Maven give us a line?
Oh, it was project 4. Yeah, it does. You're right. And hey, let's do that. Right. So what I can do is I can copy this. It was a different integration test. I can say analyze stack trace. It sees that it's on the clipboard, and then it gives me the stack trace where I can just click in, and it's like, oh, wait a second. Great. Okay, well, we broke this when we added that functionality to return the 404 when it doesn't exist. So let's fix that. So no definitions returns 404. Actually, and here, what do we want? We want... I think the exit code is still 0. What actually failed? Oh no, it threw an exception while invoking main. Illegal target. Oh yeah, invocation target exception. Oh yeah, here we go. It's not the throw that returns 404. It's no definitions throws. Yeah. Okay. Throws appointment book rest exception. And here again, you'd want something a little better than this, but appointment book rest exception. Oops. Oh, I wonder if that's not a public class. That's private.
REST client?
Yep.
Why would you want to make an exception private?
Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Why would I? I made the class itself. I think that was a mistake. Oops. Yeah. Yeah, the constructor should be private because no one else should create it. It's only created here. Yeah, I think that was the mistake I made. I'm surprised that even worked. Oh, because a runtime exception, no one actually caught it. No one's ever referenced this before. Yeah, so that was dumb. Okay, so now let me just start up Jetty. And I'll run the tests. I'll run the project 4 tests. So I'll just run that by itself. Oops, what didn't it like? Oh, got a legal argument exception because of the way things are run. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, okay. So let's see here. Try catch legal argument exception. Oops, it's got too many parens. Throw ex dot get cause. Is that gonna work? Run that again. Nope, still doesn't like exception. It was invocation target exception. Really? Okay, now it passed. Yeah, that's I should really unroll that, shouldn't it? Interesting. Anyway, okay, now it should pass. So now we'll try it once more from Maven.
You deleted everything, all the assets.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll commit this shortly so you can look what I did. Oh, I ran the wrong Maven command. I want to verify. Runs the unit tests. Starts a jetty. Okay. Now everything passed. Yay. Okay, so let me commit all that. I don't remember what we changed. Let's see here. Version control. All sorts of stuff. But is it just... I think we just did that. Yeah. Yep, we added a test for it. We fixed that one. Okay, this is pretty good. Okay. So then return a 404 when the definition of an unknown word is requested. Okay. Put that in and go from there. And so I think that's all of the stuff. And so that's your project 4. There's a lot here. And so then you shouldn't be surprised if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed or like, what the hell was all of this? Or like, okay, this is all very nice, but I got to finish up project 3 in the cones, and I'll get back to this in a few more days. But I wanted to give you a preview, and if nothing else, I guess to sort of like shock you into like, oh my god, there's more, right? I'll just wait until we get to Android. Anyway, let's recap what we did. So. Project 4, Brave New World. You'll create a new Maven project because it is different from Project 3. It's got a whole bunch of extra stuff. Here's that extra stuff that it has. It has 2 components. It has the command line program that you're used to, and then it also has this web application. And the web application is implemented in something called a servlet that runs inside something called a web container. The implementation of the web container is called Jetty. So we saw that and then the way we explored this is by using the debugger. And so what we did is when we ran Java, we ran it such that a debugger could attach to it. You can set a breakpoint, and then you can explore the code that way, figure out everything that's going on. And so we saw that when we launched our web application with a debugger, you could hit the URLs in that web application using several different clients, a couple different clients. We saw in the web browser, it had that simple form. We saw we could also just hit a URL and get information, interact with the web server. we saw that servlets have this API that they access, the servlet API that represents things like the HTTP request and the HTTP response. And we saw that even though the servlet is heavily dependent on this servlet API, you can still unit test it by using this piece of magic called Mockito, which is fun but a very advanced topic. That's the server side. On the client side, yes, we saw a simple command line program, but we use this class called the appointment book REST client to abstract out all of the interaction with the servlet. All of the code that creates the URL and does the HTTP GET or does the HTTP POST, all that's abstracted out for you so that you can focus on using that API instead of crafting the URLs and handling all of the encoded text and stuff yourself. And so there was that code, and we found that code could be tested not so easily with unit tests because it really relies on the REST service being there, but it can be tested with an integration test. And so we saw how integration tests can be run sort of during development by just having Jetty there, but then it can all be run automatically by Maven as part of your build. So that's your project 4. That's due in 2 weeks. Again, there's a lot going on right now. Prioritize your work accordingly, but know that there's plenty more to come. Okay. Any questions on Project 4 before we adjourn? We're not going to do the kata tonight. I'm tired. You're tired. I think everybody's brain is full. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll see you. Oh, sorry. Your question?
Submitting the codes is the same way as submitting any project?
There's something about that in the assignment. I think you can use the same.
There is instructions in the course thing.
Yeah, there are instructions in the assignment. Thank you. Yep. And you have something, or you're sort of like, oh my god.
It's more of a like.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you again next week, and we'll talk on the on Slack Yes. Between now and then. Wait a second.